um, Doug Hagel from Bicycle.
That's a new name for me.
Doug was started school at Silvernagle, and he was there until the school was closed, and they were picked up by the school bus. And then his sister, I think she's a bit older, was Rosalie Schwarzenberger. Do you have that name?
That one's new too.
She's from Bicycle too, and
I'll follow up and see if I can speak to those folks.
yeah, they were there till the school closed, really, and they were the great people to talk to, I'm sure.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks for sharing those names.
Right?
Yeah, I've spoken to about 6 other people, but I'm not from Bicycle, so I'm sort of depending on the people who are from there to lead me to who needs to share.
Fair enough. Where are you from?
Yeah, I'm from Calgary.
Right, okay. Because I saw Edmonton on there.
Yeah, I'm born and raised in Calgary. I don't know why Zoom just picks Edmonton for the time zone.
But your connection to Bicycle is just two people you know out there?
Yeah, I applied to the job at the museum last summer, and I work for the Glenbow Museum in Calgary, and I was excited to see what's happening in Bicycle. So
Well, that's great. Good for you.
thank you.
So, where do we go from here?
Sure. So did you?
If this is working, you tell me, and then just forget about it. Okay.
No, this is great.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Do you have any questions for me about the project?
I don't really know anything about it. I understand that they're doing this for all the schools that were in existence at that time. And
Yeah.
and our story is probably not unusual because it's similar to all those country schools. But anyway, let's give it a go and we'll see what happens.
Sounds good.
Anytime you can cut me off. Okay.
So I just wanted to check with you that it's okay that we're recording this. Is that all right with you?
Sure.
Great. Thank you.
All right.
I'm going to send along just a waiver that says that you do agree to be recorded, because the end goal is to make a new exhibit for the museum, but also to put that exhibit on the internet so that people can see it even if they're not in Bicycle.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But there, I feel very inadequate for a lot of this stuff. Well, anyway.
What I found so far is that everybody has different stories, and it helps to put pieces together, because some people remember some things and other people remember other things, and hearing everybody's stories really sort of makes a more full picture.
Well, make sure and get a hold of Doug and Rosalie, because they would have right up to the closing day of the schools.
Okay, sounds good. I will. Thank you. So I guess, yeah, we should start by just having you say which school it was that you went to and when you were there.
Well, I went to Silvernagle School. I started in grade 1, and I think the year was 1939. And that was a long time ago. So some of the things that I have forgotten, but it's an interesting project to go back and look over them. The school was, the land was donated by Joseph Silvernagle, and it was located about 3 miles west of Bicycle and maybe 2.5 miles north. And our farm was 2 miles further north from that. So we went with our horse and buggy to school every day. And as you know, 1939 was terribly stressful times because of the war and so on. And a lot of things were just starting to change. But we went along with it every day. So it was very good experience for us. I went to school along with my brothers and my sister. In our school, total population was maybe 20 kids. My first teacher was Alice Barkley, who was probably about 18 years old, but just out of normal school or whatever they had at that time. Anyway, she was a very dedicated person, and she became Mrs. Nick Velker, and she married one of the local fellows. But it was tough to hire teachers, I would imagine, because it was they were isolated. They were in this little teachers, which was basically 2 rooms, and they had no telephone, they had no plumbing or electrical power or anything. And so they were kind of really living in a strange environment, especially there, because we were basically a German-speaking community, because we had all spoken German as our first language. And so these teachers and the students had a little trouble with relating sometimes, because but anyway, we had, I think, wonderful years. We, as kids, had no really involvement with the things that were going on as far as the world was going, but our parents were under a lot of stress. So along with that, there was the ration books and the rationing of sugars and things. So it was changing. And but going back to the schoolhouse, it was actually a 2-room schoolhouse to begin with. And they had a couple from Ireland who came, and they taught the junior grades and also the high school, although the population of the school was very low. But this couple lived there in the teachers, and they did very well. But then before my time, they left there, and teachers were very hard to come by. So it was downsized to 1 room and 1 teacher, and that's how it was until it closed, I'm sure. But let's see, it was a 1-room schoolhouse. Basically, with a furnace on, big furnace with a jacket around to heat the place. And, some of the older kids were invited to or paid $1 or $2 a month to look after coming early and making sure that the school was warm and so on, which it hardly ever was. But yeah, they also had to do things like sweep the floors and make sure that the chalkboards were ready and so on, and of course bringing water, which was Um, there was no water, source of water there for either the school or the teacher. So they had to bring water as a source of drinking water and so on. Let's see, where else do we go from here? The teacher, I can never quite understand how she could organize the 8 grades in one morning, but she seemed to do very well. The grade 1s were sort of looked after, and then probably with the help of some of the grade 8s, we mixed very well, because my day there's maybe 20 kids. All of us were, not all of us, but most all of us were related, cousins. And so the stress of new things wasn't really there. We would look forward to starting school, and met our relatives, our friends, and went from there. Now, yeah, the school had a big map of the world up on one wall, and that was very important for all the grades, especially during times that we were going through. There was a chalkboard, the big chalkboard with ABCs written up on top and so on, and that was your teaching equipment, I think. But I don't remember that we had any kind of a library or anything, but we were issued a reader in each grade, which we had to return, so we had to be very careful that it was returnable at the end of the year. And we had little math books or arithmetic, and they were, we went through chapter by chapter on that. And of course, we were judged on how quickly we were going through the different chapters. I'm jumping all over here, but one of the questions that was asked was about the health situation, which we had a health check every morning. And every morning we had to, someone go through, an appointed older kid, went through it and asked all these questions, whether we brushed our teeth, whether we combed our hair, whatever we did. And at the end, if we passed a daily inspection, we got a gold star, which was a big thing, of course. And again, with the health situation, we had a school nurse come once a year to immunize the kids, and immunize all the kids in the community, as I remember. The other important person who we used to drop in unexpected and was the school inspector. The school inspector arrived, and he looked like a very important guy, black suit and tie and so on. It was unusual because he came and he was inspecting the teacher, I'm sure, because we thought we were being inspected, so we all had to be promised to make promises to be on our best behavior, doing our readings and so on for the inspector. But it was so important that day happened without the embarrassment to the teacher. The highlights of the year were interesting. We had the Christmas concert, which we started practicing probably in October sometime for the little skits and songs and so on. And the event, when it happened, was some really big occasion because, well, things were so different 80 years ago without the power and lighting and so on. We had people brought their gas lanterns and so on. And someone in the community brought a Christmas tree. And someone was a Santa Claus. And Santa Claus was fairly new to us at that time because we had Chris Kimball, which is the German version of the good person. And they had a little treat for everybody. And being it was sugars ration and so on, we did have mandarin oranges and nuts and a few things. So these were all just really huge events for us. Anyway, that was at the beginning of the school year. And I enjoyed it a lot. And we had good relationship with all the students. And we respect our teacher a lot. But she had to make sure she kept control of the kids. So the strap was always a threat. We had to, didn't use it very often. In fact, I never had a strapping, but my older brothers talked of being really strapped a lot. But by the time I came along, it was kind of frowned upon. But there was no secrets with my brothers and sisters going to the same school in the same schoolroom. Everything went home to their parents. And so that was kind of strange or different from what it would be today. Another big event of the year was the school sports day, which the whole community came and they brought food and we had the races and so on. But everything was just a very fun occasion. And if we did well on our school level, we competed into bicycle for their annual event where we could compete against more kids. I was pretty good athlete, I guess, because I got to go to the bicycle place, and then we had a further meeting at Strathmore. If you won at bicycle, you went on to Strathmore. And I'm not sure what happened there, whether it was provincial or what it was, but I didn't get any further than Strathmore, so I don't know what happened from there. Some of the questions I was thinking about was our extra activities around the school. We played a lot of softball, and we had the normal winter games like foxing hoops and so on. And the thing was, everybody was included, really. Even the teacher was the umpire, the referee, whatever. So even grade ones got to turn it back and so on. And it was always fun. The recesses are always too short. Noon hours too short. We used to go sleigh riding in the wintertime, and of course, we all got wet and so on. We could hang our clothes, wet clothing on the furnace jacket and so on. But the thing with the safety aspect of the school, it would be highly questioned now, I would think, because we had this kids looking after the heating, the furnace thing and so on. And annually they did a good oiling of the hardwood floor that was in there. And the oil was saturated into the wood and so on. And we had a product called Dust Bane, I think that's what it was, where the kids swept the floors with, and with just the dust control. But all these things now would be such fire hazards, and just wouldn't be acceptable at all. But somehow we made it, and we had good days and our bad days. Basically, that was our school day. We had a great admiration for our teachers, and rightly so, because they're under a lot of stress, because a lot of them had never been exposed to the German language, and we preferred speaking German at that time. But it certainly went out of style during the time we asked not to speak German. But that was a difficult thing for my older brothers and sisters who grew up speaking German, and by the time I came along, I was pretty bilingual by grade one sort of thing. So we got by. So yeah, there's many things that happened, but the strange thing that happened is the school yard and school disappeared without a trace. There's nothing going back there now. It's kind of sad because there's nothing there that would indicate that anything had ever happened there. So I'm glad you guys are doing all this thing to revive some sort of a record of that it ever existed.
Yeah, I'm very happy to be doing this work. It's a lot of fun.
Are we doing all right? Are we?
Yeah, this is great. One thing I wanted to ask you about, a couple people have said that their older siblings mostly spoke German, but the younger siblings grew up a bit more bilingual. Did your older siblings take it upon themselves to teach you?
Well, it gradually came about. I'm sure that they brought the English language into the home, and I guess that's how we learned basically how to communicate in English. But we still prefer to be comfortable with our childhood language. But things had to change, and they really did. And we were pretty darn conscious citizens because we had a Red Cross club, this is the school club, which we president was nominated, so on. So he taught us parliamentary procedure, and we learned how to conduct meetings and so on. And the Red Cross Club was basically contributing. We were buying war stamps and doing collecting things that were there was a demand for at that time. One of them was bones. To bones were brought to some central spot, and they were shipped somewhere. I don't know what they used them for. Another thing was rubber tires, so we collected all those things, and we bought the war stamps, and our source of money was gophers were there was a bounty on gophers. That wouldn't go too well these days either, but the gophers were quite a nuisance, and we were, we could collect a few cents for every gopher tail, and the teacher kept track of our gopher tails, and we bought war stamps with the money, but the gophers were endless amount of entertainment for us. We were forever chasing gophers and trying to get that 2, 3, 4 cents, whatever it was, for their tails. And yeah, that was kind of tough on the gophers, but anyway, it was our entertainment a lot of times.
One other thing you mentioned earlier, that there was a map in the school, and I was thinking about how we all have maps on our phones everywhere now, and I was wondering, did your home have a map?
We had an encyclopedia, and we had, I'm not sure where, I'm sure the school map was, well, a huge map, and we could relate to that. I'm not sure where we were first exposed to maps, but reading was very, very restricted. To my knowledge, our reading was, there's no school library, there's no school books available. The teacher had her books, and she read through the assignments and so on, I guess. But as far as for personal or recreational reading, it wasn't available to us. But as time went on, we got more books for Christmas presents and so on, and we shared them a lot. But the school itself didn't provide anything other beyond the textbooks and scribblers and pencils.
Was there anything at that time that students were expected to bring to school, or did the school provide most of your supplies?
We were supplied with a scribbler, and maybe more than one a year, I'm not sure. The pencils and ink were supplied. A few things like that, small things were, but we always had to be careful with our supplies that we did have, because they were very limited. But yeah, the report cards were always interesting. It was at the discretion of the teacher where you stood in it. So yeah, fun years. Anyway, that's over 80 years ago, and hard to recall some of these things.
You've got a fantastic memory. I can't believe that you recall your teacher's name even. So that's really great.
They weren't hard to forget because they were special people. You know, I can't imagine how an 18-year-old girl would go up into that kind of environment because there's no safety things or anything. They were just lived in this little schoolhouse, Tatridge, and they were just very special people.
So would you say that you enjoyed your school experience? Was it a good time in your life?
Yeah, yeah. Looking back, it was a great time. And there was good days and there was bad days, I'm sure, but we only remember the good days. And, yeah, it was a good time.
Two more things I'm really curious about.
All right, let's try it.
I'm wondering, do you remember much what you wore to school?
Yeah, we had did coverall things, and that was what the guys all wore. It was the same thing with hand-me-downs and so on. But usually for the beginning of the year, we get a new pair of bib overalls for school, which we had to be careful of too, because when we got home, we had to change for our chores and so on. And the girls were, I think they were always in skirts, and slacks were not acceptable for girls at that time. But we had pretty winter wear was pretty well. We had to be protected from the elements. Our buggy ride to school was like about 2 miles, which maybe took a half an hour, and we were had blankets and so on, and the horse that we had was had been going to school for so long that she knew the way, and she could take us to school, bring us home without any guidance from us. So we, our clothes were pretty adequate at that time. Although we always preferred riding barefoot, and that was kind of the hardship we faced when we started school. We had to wear shoes. And so that was probably the hardest part. Not really, but it was one of those things you remember. So,
Sorry, go ahead.
pardon me.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I didn't have anything more than that. We just, it's just a funny thing that I remember that we hated to put shoes on. And that was pretty common with all of us, I guess. They ran barefooted in the summertime. And I'm not sure what we wore in the wintertime anyway, but I know it was hard to put shoes on for school in the summer.
Do you remember with the clothes you wore, did they come from the catalog or the store, or were they made for you?
I think mostly catalog. I think it was the Eaton's catalog and the Simpson Sears catalog were main source of our purchases, I think. We would didn't get to town that often, even though my home was only 6 miles out of town. But it was a great distance at that time because people were just starting to have automobiles for transportation and so on. So it seemed like a long distance, but now it's just yeah, it's just a short distance. Let's see, something else I was going to mention. I forget what it was.
Well, the other thing I was really curious about is if you remember much about the food that you ate.
Oh yeah, we most of our school lunches were peanut butter and jam. Used that a lot. Occasionally we had bologna. But apples were fairly easy to come by. I'm not sure why, but we always had lots of apples. And vegetables and so on. But I remember the jam sandwiches, and we each had our Rogers Golden Syrup cans for lunch buckets, which also were handy to use for carrying water to drown out gophers. So yeah, we everybody had their lunch bucket and the sandwiches. I remember one sandwich we had sardine sandwiches. They got pretty high in those lunch buckets by noon, but it was just one of those things you remember because you're not very pleasant at the time. But yeah, jam sandwiches were a big thing. I don't know. Don't think there's very much else that they could do. You know, the people bake bread every week, and it was always homemade bread, and peanut butter and jam were fairly easily accessible. My mother used to buy peanut butter in 5-gallon buckets. 5 gallons of peanut butter is a lot of peanut butter. It's what was required for big families, I guess. But yeah, the horse and buggy things were quite interesting. They because the horse had to be prepared in the morning, and they had to be fed at noon and watered at noon, and so on. And every family had their horse in their stall where they kept their horse in during the day at school, and in the school barn was always a hangout for the bigger guys, bigger boys who, and the teachers wouldn't allow them to hang out in the barn too long. They could go out and do what was required to feed the horses and so on. They tended to get into trouble. They hung around the school barn too long. But the teacher had to really keep control of the kid. If she ever lost control of, or the respect for her students, it would be tough on her, really tough. But to my way of thinking, she never did. She none of I think there's about 3 teachers there over the time I was at the naval school. They were all very much in control, and they did very, very well for the situations they're working in. So, Amanda, it's been good talking to you.
Great. It makes me wonder just one more thing. If the older boys were getting into trouble, what kinds of things would they be doing?
Well, they would smoke. Somebody would sniff some tobacco from home, get together and smoke, which of course was a big grown-up thing to do. And as long as I went to Silver School, I was never old enough to join the big boys. So I didn't learn to smoke, and I didn't learn all the other facts of life that happen when a bunch of kids get together and do what they do, talk about the things they do. But yeah, the school barn was an excuse for a getaway for the older kids who had chores to do at the school barn. And the teacher, of course, had to supervise in the school. And you wouldn't dare tell on anybody because you didn't want to get your family into trouble, and so you had had a little trouble with the allegiance to your older siblings and so on, and to your teacher. You didn't, so you couldn't tattle on them or else, so that sort of thing. And you didn't want to be a teacher's pet because a teacher's pet was frowned upon. By your fellow students. You didn't want to do that. And some kids were better at it than others. I was never very good at being a teacher's pet. But anyway, they were fun years.
That's fantastic, Leonard. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's been fun. And yeah, if anything we can do to help further the things. I know there's other people who have good experiences there, so we're pleased to reminisce when we get together. So,
Great. So my next steps are to kind of put together some videos for the exhibit and to do some research about anything that we're missing about the schools, the stories that we want to capture. So talking to other people, as you've mentioned, Doug and Rosalie, and then the project, most of the information should be done by late this fall, but then we send it to the Virtual Museum of Canada, and they do sort of transcribing it into French and making it so that people who maybe can't see or can't hear can still use this information on the internet. So all of that takes almost another year. So by the time the project will be finished altogether and available on the internet will be fall 2021. So it takes quite a while. But in the meantime, if you have any questions for us, please don't hesitate, send an email or give me a call or something. And yeah, I'll be in touch if I think of any other questions for you, if that's okay.
Anytime, sure. We've been isolated so long now. It's become a way of life for us. So anyway, yeah, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Use what you can of it, what you can't. It's been an experience.
Great. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm going to send you a release form if it's all right for you to just kind of fill out to say that yes, you agree to participate and you're all right with that. So it's up to you if you want to sign or not. It's totally your decision, but I'll send that to you in an email.
By email, sure.
Okay. All right.
Okay, thank you, Amanda.
Thank you so much, Leonard. You take care.
You too.
Okay.
Have a
Bye-bye.
Bye now.